Hey guys, Kyle Kelly from the Island-wide team, and we're going over the 22-step home buying process so that you as a buyer know what to expect when you're thinking about purchasing a home. Step number one, I always recommend to my buyers, before you start looking online, before you start visiting open houses and figuring out what kind of house you like or where you want to live, is meet with a loan officer and get a mortgage pre-approval in hand. Why? Oftentimes, what a buyer thinks they can afford is much different than what a lender is willing to actually lend them. So make sure you're visiting with a mortgage professional and having the conversation about getting a pre-approval in hand. Also, if you do visit a house and you fall in love with that house and you want to make an offer, if your financing isn't lined up, you're not going to be able to make that offer and you're going to lose the property to somebody who's already got their pre-approval done. So step one, guys, go ahead and get a pre-approval from a mortgage loan officer. Step number two in the home buying process is to sit with your realtor and create an online search. Now, this is different than visiting those sites like Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, any of the other third-party sites out there. You want to work with a realtor who's got proprietary software, like we do, that'll link to the MLS every 15 minutes and update you on what is coming to the market, what has hit the market that meets your search criteria. You don't want to be the last to know. You want to be the first to know. And the way that you're going to get that information in your hand is to work with one of us who has a system that can update you by text message and email every 15 minutes if something is coming to the market. Once we've done our online search and we've looked at some properties that we think we want to go see, now it's time to actually go view those properties in person. Now, hopefully you've already looked at the 20 to 30 pictures, the videos, the 3D tours, if those listing agents have put these things up on the MLS and made them available to you. So when you're narrowing down your search, you're really going to look in person at the properties that have really fit those needs and those wants that you're looking for. This isn't time to just kind of kick tires and look around and window shop. This is when we're lining up maybe 3 or 4 properties based on all the research we've done on them to go see them in person and see if they really do check those boxes. So once we found the property that you want to make an offer on, where do we go? So I'm the one who's going to be doing the negotiating for you. I will look at all the previous sales in the area on comparable homes. This is what realtors refer to as running comps. So running comps means running reports on area comparable sales so that we can see what we believe to our best knowledge this home is going to appraise for. Not what it should sell for, but what we think it should appraise for. Then we'll be able to guide you on what we think the offer you should make is. Ultimately, it's going to be in your hands, but if the home doesn't appraise, 9 times out of 10, you're not getting the financing unless you've got some extra cash to make up that difference. So it's really important to pay attention to what we think the home will appraise for and what is going on in the market at the time to figure out the best offer that you can make on that property. So once we've made that offer, we're going to start negotiations. We'll typically go back and forth a little bit until we get an acceptable offer. Now, an acceptable offer is different than an accepted offer. This is very particular to the Long Island market. I've talked with agents all across the United States who say, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And I'm sure I'll get some feedback on this as well. But basically, we do not accept offers here on Long Island. We have what is known as an acceptable offer, willing to move forward with the process. And the next step after acceptable offer is the home inspection, which is really for the buyer's due diligence. Now we're up to the home inspection. What we're going to do is get that home inspector lined up as soon as possible. Why? Because as I mentioned, we don't have an accepted offer. We have an acceptable offer. And the seller is still able to show the property, to field offers, and to accept another offer and move forward with another buyer at the same time. And you really have nothing to stand on until we can get this home in fully executed contract. That's the only time that we stop showing properties and you have reached an acceptable offer status. So you want to get the home inspection done as quickly as possible. You want to use a reputable home inspector. This isn't time to call Uncle Joey. This isn't time to have your dad come along with a tape measure. This is when you want to hire a professional home inspector who will go through that property with you and show you what he has found and take pictures along the way so we can document what that property looked like at the time of acceptable offer. We want to make sure that we have proof of what that property looked like when we did our home inspection. So home inspection is complete. What are we looking for? Well, we want to make sure that there's no actual safety hazards. We want to make sure that there's no structural issues. And we want to make sure that there's no leaking going on, whether it be through the plumbing or from the roof. Those three things are the only thing that we're going to be asking the seller to take care of. The home inspection is really just for the buyer's knowledge. This isn't time to nitpick. This isn't time to try to negotiate the price down. This is time to say, hey, now that I have more knowledge about this property, am I willing to move forward with the purchase based on the knowledge that I have? Now, there may be some things that we can negotiate, maybe some things that the seller will take care of, maybe some things that you can take care of before getting to the closing table. However, again, this is really for your knowledge. We got to remember, there are other buyers behind you ready, willing, and able to pull the trigger and purchase this property without requesting any repairs. So the fewer requests you have, the smoother this process is going to be and the faster we can get to contract. Speaking of contract, this is when the attorneys come in. So here on Long Island, the seller has an attorney, the buyer has an attorney, the bank has an attorney, and there's a title closer. What happens with our contracts is the seller's attorney will draw up the contract and will send it to the buyer's attorney for review. This is when the attorneys then negotiate and go back and forth on certain items that they like to see or remove from the contract. Every attorney works a little differently. Every attorney likes things worded a certain way. Remember, the attorneys are looking out for their client. They need to come together and come to an agreement on that contract. Once they have, the buyer will sign the contracts and deposit their down payment into the attorney's escrow account. Agents do not hold escrow on Long Island. The attorneys hold escrow. So when you sign that contract as a buyer, you're coming with your down payment for the attorney to hold an escrow. They will then send that contract along with your escrow back to the seller's attorney so they can deposit that escrow check and have the seller sign contract. Only then are we at full contract and the property is no longer being shown. From the time that we have an acceptable offer to the home inspection, to the seller's attorney drawing up the contract, the buyer's attorney signing the contract, the seller's attorney signing the contract, this process can take, sometimes I've seen as much as 14 days to enter into fully executed contract. And that entire time, the seller still has the right to show the property, field other offers, and move forward with another buyer who's maybe acting quicker. So yes, it is a little difficult here on Long Island as the buyer. It is much different than any other state, especially down south, especially going out to the Midwest. We are more similar to California in the transaction than anywhere because of the attorney involvement, but this is not attorney review period. You actually have an attorney working for you. In New York, especially downstate, the Bar Association has determined the writing of contracts to be a practice of law. This is why realtors do not write contracts in downstate New York. So now you're in full contract. What happens next? The contract is going to be sent to your mortgage lender and they're going to complete that mortgage application with you and start working towards getting you the mortgage commitment. At the same time, the attorney is ordering title. What does ordering title mean? Here on Long Island, we're going to the municipalities and we're ordering all judgments, liens, anything that could be attached to that property, the history of that property, make sure that mortgages have been satisfied, make sure there's no open judgments. They're also going to be looking for what we call out of possessions, where a fence may not be on the property line, or there may be some bushes or shrubs that are extending into the neighbor's properties, or maybe they're further in on your property and therefore you can't access strips of your property outside of those fences or shrubbery. This is what we call an out of possession, and we need to clear that in order to have clear title. Once we have clear title and we have a mortgage commitment is when we can schedule the clear to close. But there's one thing that has to happen in between, and that's the appraisal. So what happens with the appraisal? The loan officer is going to order up the appraisal, hopefully sooner rather than later, as quickly as we can in the process, once we know that we're in full contract, so that we can start working on whether or not the bank is going to loan you the full amount. So depending on the type of mortgage you're using, 9 times out of 10, that property must appraise for the full sales price, regardless of how much you're putting down. Now, if you are working with a larger down payment, you can move those funds around a little bit to make up for any shortage in the appraisal. This is why listing agents and sellers tend to favor larger down payments, because we know that the buyer is going to be able to make up any difference if there is an appraisal shortage. However, if there's no appraisal shortage, if the appraisal has come in at or above sale price, smooth sailing from here, we can get to that mortgage commitment a lot more quickly. So who determines whether or not you're going to get that mortgage? Yeah, sometimes we refer to them as the undertaker. But the underwriter is the one who's actually reviewing your file, who's going through and asking for you to update your file on a daily or weekly basis. We need to show any income that's happening, your previous pay stubs, any pay stubs that are coming forward until you get to the closing table need to be submitted to underwriting. If you magically come across some money under your mattress, you do not go and deposit that into your bank account. You're going to want to speak with your loan officer about how the money can enter your account so that the underwriter is aware of it. Their job is to basically make sure that you have the money to be able to afford the property and continue to afford to make your mortgage payment down the line. Because if you default on that mortgage payment inside of the first 2 years, that's really not looking good on the bank's end. That means the underwriter didn't do their job. So they are going through your file with a fine-tooth comb, asking for where the funds came from to make sure that you have enough to get to the closing table and thereafter. All right, so the appraisal's done, the underwriter's gone through your file, they've issued your commitment, and they're saying that you're gonna go ahead and be able to close. Title has come back clear. We get what is known as the clear to close. Those are the 3 favorite words of every realtor and loan officer and attorney out there, is we are clear, we are ready to schedule this closing. First, we're going to need to get that homeowner's insurance binder squared away so that we know that you have homeowner's insurance covered. And we're going to transfer those utilities. The seller is going to cancel the water, the electric, the gas, the oil, whatever it may be, and get those out of their name and get everything transferred into your name so that we can go ahead and schedule our final walkthrough. The final walkthrough will typically happen the day before, the evening before, or the morning of the closing, depending on what time that closing is. And this is when the buyer gets the opportunity to walk through the property again and make sure it's in the condition that they expected based upon the agreement on the home inspection. Were any repairs done, or was any damage done when the seller had moved their stuff out of there? Is everything the way that it's supposed to be? Is it broom swept? Seller does not hire a cleaner and deliver you with a sparkling clean home. By contract, it needs to be broom swept, right? So we need to make sure that their stuff is out of there, that you're able to take possession. If not, we can work out some post-possession things. Those are some issues that we'll deal with on a case-by-case basis, but really, we want to make sure on that final walkthrough there's no damage, the utilities are on, the heat is still operating, the water is still running, the lighting is still working, and we can go ahead and get to the closing table. Closing day is here. All right, so we're finally getting to the closing table. Sellers, you've got a few documents to sign. You're going to show up with your identification. The buyer, we need you there on time. We need to make sure you have identification with you, and you want to have an ice pack on your wrist for the amount of documents that you're going to be signing while you're sitting at that table. Your attorney is going to go through each of these documents with you, and this is where you're signing your life away to go ahead and get into that home of your dreams. But it hasn't ended yet. After that closing, I'm going to want you to choose your closing gift so that we can send you something as a little thank you for working with us and the Island-wide team. And then you're going to schedule your housewarming party, which I would be more than happy to get the keg or the hero and show up at your housewarming party so that you can invite me and show up at your housewarming party so you can introduce me to all your friends and family as the best realtor you've ever met and the one who made your dreams come true so that I can go ahead and help them accomplish their dream of home ownership. That's the 22-step home buying process.